A few days ago, I came across this video on Philosopher tier list, and I thought it was an alright video, until he started talking about Machiavelli. And what followed wasn't an analysis. It was a full-blown character assassination, and here's how he did it. Also, let me stop this dramatic music. The video isn't all that serious.
Machiavelli.
Machiavelli is one of the most famous evil or dark characters in Western philosophy. His most famous work is The Prince, and it's basically a handbook on how to achieve political power by being as ruthless and treacherous as possible. It's a tutorial for a tyrant. And it was apparently Joseph Stalin's favorite book. For Machiavelli, the ultimate good for humans is attaining political power, and then from there, chasing more and more power. He wants us to be free from childish feelings of guilt or morality. For him, there are no rules. There is only power, brute force, and brutality. Here's a good example of a Machiavellian act. A ruler conquers another state and instructs his second-in-command to lay down the law. Brutal executions, torture, instilling fear, all types of evil things. The people now hate their new ruler. Then, the ruler has his secret police kill the second-in-command and put his body in the town square, and then gives out a decree saying that his second-in-command acted without his authority and was overly brutal. The people now fear the ruler, but no longer hate him. Machiavelli would consider this good politics. To be as fair as possible, Machiavelli did reveal some uncomfortable truths about how to achieve power, but it would be disastrous to actually use his ideas in practice as a guide to life. Nobody in their right mind would want to work for a Machiavellian, or have a Machiavellian work for them. It makes it so that we can't be social animals in the first place. D tier.
Now you might be wondering, that seemed like a fair assessment. Well, it isn't, and I'm going to break it down bit by bit.
Machiavelli.
Machiavelli is one of the most famous evil or dark characters in Western philosophy. His most famous work is The Prince, and it's basically a handbook on how to achieve political power by being as ruthless and treacherous as possible. It's a tutorial for a tyrant.
Tutorial for a tyrant? Seriously? To understand the conditions under which Machiavelli wrote The Prince, we'll need to take a look at not only his life, but also the political environment under which Machiavelli grew up.
Niccolò Machiavelli was born in Florence in 1469. At the time, Florence was a republic, on paper anyways. The Florentine government consisted of 8 priori who were all led by one sort of prime minister. Every 2 months, these people would be elected via a lottery system from the names of well-to-do, respectable Florentine men. In theory, this allowed a constant changing of power so that no single profession or geographic area could seize control entirely or permanently. In practice, this system was an absolute disaster. Every 2 months there were wholesale changes to government approach and priorities. So the ruling Medici family had stepped in. They manipulated the lottery system, ensuring that all eligible names were friendly and would toe the Medici line. Florence was functioning like something of a dictatorship. This level of corruption wasn't really rare in Italy, rather it was closer to the norm than an exception. Wars raged around Europe for territory, and Italian mercenary government leaders changed sides at the drop of a hat. This is all to say, Machiavelli grew up in a society where the idea and the reality of how things operated were wildly divergent. He had a front row seat to political dysfunction and corruption. Meanwhile, he learned from a young age the price of failing as a politician. Near his 9th birthday, conspirators against the Medici family were hung upside down from the government's main building and left there for weeks to rot. This combination of corruption and brutality were seemingly formative in Machiavelli's later career. People don't really know much about Machiavelli's early life, but he did achieve a significant level of education. After the Medici family was pushed from power in 1494, Machiavelli was appointed to a Florentine government office where he authored government documents. Shortly thereafter, Machiavelli earned himself a couple of promotions. He was appointed to Second Chancery, which was one of 2 key state departments in Florence. He also became Secretary of the Ten of War. This was a committee that dealt with foreign relations and war preparations. In 1512, the Florentine Republic was overthrown and the Medici family returned to power. Suspecting Machiavelli of conspiracy, the Medicis imprisoned tortured, and exiled him the following year. It was there, in exile, that Machiavelli produced his most famous work.
To sum shit up, Florence, where Machiavelli grew up, had the brilliant idea of picking its leaders through a lottery. Yeah, like names out of a hat. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was they replaced them every 2 months. Since all the leaders had differing priorities and opinions, no proper work got done. Imagine if presidents got changed every 2 months. One says let the immigrants in, and the other says out. One says in, the other says out. I'm not saying either of them are right or wrong. I'm saying that in this game of Simon Says, no actual work would get done. Anyways, back to Machiavelli. In 1512, the exiled Medici family returned to Florence. The republic Machiavelli served for 14 years was overthrown almost instantly. The Medici then began purging anyone associated with the old government. In 1513, a failed assassination plot against the Medici triggered a crackdown. Machiavelli wasn't involved in this conspiracy, but he had previously corresponded with some of the now accused. So when Machiavelli's name appeared in the correspondence, and since he was a well-known figure in the former government, Medici said, "Fuck this guy too." Because why not? He was arrested, without a trial of course, and thrown into prison, and was subjected to brutal torture called strappato, a torture method where your hands are tied behind your back, and you're suspended by a rope from the ceiling, then dropped repeatedly until your shoulders dislocated and muscles tore. He was tortured multiple times, not for what he did, but because he was associated with the wrong side. Even after release, Machiavelli wasn't allowed back into public service. He was exiled to his small family farm outside Florence, completely removed from the political world he once helped shape. He had gone from being one of the most respected civil servants in Florence to being jobless, powerless, and watched by Medici spies. So when Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't speaking from a throne. He was writing from the gutter. As for him being
evil or dark characters in Western philosophy.
Was he really, though? You could technically call him dark, but evil he certainly was not. I mean, let's go through this together, shall we? Did Machiavelli ever betray anyone in power? No. Was Machiavelli ever involved in a conspiracy or political plot? No. Was he involved in torture? Yes, as a victim, not as a perpetrator. The closest thing to evil Machiavelli ever did is that he wrote the book Prince, in which he stopped giving a fuck about morality. If you were in his situation, I think you would too. Imagine just chilling at your job, only to find out that the government got overthrown, and now you're being accused of trying to assassinate the president. Screw a fair trial. You don't even get a trial. Straight to prison, and then straight to the torture chamber. Just as you got out of that nightmare, you get exiled to some backwater farm in Tuscany. Even after all that bullshit, Machiavelli was just chilling. He started working the land, chatting with peasants, playing cards at the inn, then reading classical texts at night.
And it was apparently Joseph Stalin's favorite book.
And? What does that have to do with anything? Unless you're trying to imply something along the lines of, Stalin liked Prince, Machiavelli wrote Prince, henceforth proved Machiavelli equals Stalin. Because that'd be crazy.
For Machiavelli, the ultimate good for humans is attaining political power, and then from there, chasing more and more power.
Okay, that was oversimplified to the point that it completely changes what Machiavelli wanted to convey. It'd be the equivalent of saying, for Shakespeare, the ultimate purpose of human life is to wear tights and speak in rhymes about skulls. Or the equivalent of saying, Darwin believed life is just a race to kill the weak. Or, Karl Marx thought everyone should just be equally poor and share toothbrushes. Okay, that might actually be what he wanted, so forget I ever said that. I know I got my point through, but still, here's 2 more examples. Gandhi's solution to everything was to skip meals and hope for the best. Sigmund Freud thinks every guy wants to sleep with his mom. Each of these examples shows how extreme oversimplification can distort the original meaning beyond recognition. And just like that, when you say,
for Machiavelli, the ultimate good for humans is attaining political power, and then from there, chasing more and more power.
It is an extreme oversimplification that makes Machiavelli look like a power-hungry lunatic. Although Machiavelli does say chase and hold on to power, it's not because he thinks power should be your ultimate goal in life. It's because back in his day where popes raised armies, kings switched sides mid-war. The world of politics was chaotic, dangerous, and full of betrayal, even more so than it is today. So Machiavelli simply said you want to live long and bring some kind of stability to your people. Well, then start running and chasing power.
He wants us to be free from childish feelings of guilt or morality. For him, there are no rules. There is only power, brute force, and brutality.
This statement does capture a certain amount of harsh realism that Machiavelli talks about, but it again entirely misses the mark when it comes to representing his intent. Although Machiavelli does tell the rulers to abandon naive ideas of virtue, that doesn't mean he had no rules. On the contrary, he had quite a few rules. The one relevant here would be, violence should only be used when it is truly necessary, and even then, it should be swift and targeted. And as for...
There is only power, brute force, and brutality.
That's not just wrong, it's suicidal. If a ruler relies only on power and brutality, then people won't just hate him, they'll rise up and destroy him. That's why Machiavelli praises leaders who know how to make people fear them, but not hate them, who are ruthless only when they must be, and who understand that public support is not optional.
Here's a good example of a Machiavellian act. A ruler conquers another state and instructs his second-in-command to lay down the law. Brutal executions, torture, instilling fear, all types of evil things. The people now hate their new ruler. Then, the ruler has his secret police kill the second-in-command and put his body in the town square, and then gives out a decree saying that his second-in-command acted without his authority and was overly brutal. The people now fear the ruler, but no longer hate him. Machiavelli would consider this good politics.
This Machiavellian act did happen. Not sure why he used picture of Bowser. Here's the picture of the guy who did this shit, and here's how it went down. Cesare Borgia had just conquered a region in Italy. The place was full of corruption and lawlessness. To bring order, he appointed Ramiro de Orco, a tough and brutal enforcer. Cesare gave him full authority to clean up the region. Ramiro did his job a little too well. He used fear, torture, and executions to crush opposition and establish control. And it worked. The place became orderly, but the people despised him. They feared the new regime and started hating Cesare for the cruelty. So Cesare pulled a 200 IQ move. He had Ramiro executed and cut in half. I wonder if he was cut horizontally or vertically. Anyways, he left Ramiro's body displayed in the town square and said this guy went rogue, and whatever the fuck he did had nothing to do with me. And it worked. People were still afraid because they saw what Cesare was capable of, but now they felt protected from cruelty. I know, crazy, considering Cesare just executed someone and then had him cut in half, but because the one who actually carried out the brutality was now dead, the people blamed him, not Cesare. In their eyes, the villain was gone, and Cesare had delivered justice. You ask if it was betrayal? Of course it was. But tell me, which is the greater betrayal? To sacrifice one man for the good of the state? Or to cling to private loyalty and lose the entire province? So yeah. Cold? Definitely. Ruthless? No doubt. But from a Machiavellian point of view, it was smart politics. Ramiro was never meant to stay. He was the villain in the opening act, the one who takes the fall so the hero can walk on stage clean.
Machiavelli would consider this good politics.
Literally any successful politician would consider this good politics. Because it is. There are two ways you can define politics. The idealist way, where politics is all about justice, participation, and service, or the Machiavellian way, aka the realist way, where politics refers to stability and effective control. And believe me when I say this, one of them will get you further in life than another.
To be as fair as possible, Machiavelli did reveal some uncomfortable truths about how to achieve power, but it would be disastrous to actually use his ideas in practice as a guide to life. Nobody in their right mind would want to work for a Machiavellian, or have a Machiavellian work for them. It makes it so that we can't be social animals in the first place. D tier.
True, nobody would want to work for someone who might stab them in the back the moment they become politically inconvenient, but in practice, many people do work for Machiavellian types, and often don't even realize it. Modern politics, big business, high-stakes diplomacy, these are all filled with leaders who use Machiavellian methods selectively. People think Machiavellian politics died with monarchies and poisoned goblets, and that it's all in the past. But that's just not true. It's alive and well, wearing a suit and talking about values on cable news. Here, let me give you an example.
Do you know who's sitting behind you? You've got families from across the nation whose children are either severely harmed or gone, and you don't think it's appropriate to talk about steps that you took? The fact that you didn't fire a single person? Let me ask you this. Have you compensated any of the victims?
Sorry?
Have you compensated any of the victims? These girls, have you compensated them?
I don't believe so.
Why not? Don't you think they deserve some compensation for what your platform has done? Help
Senator,
with counseling services? Help with dealing with the issues that your service has caused?
our job is to make sure that we build tools to help keep people safe.
Are you
across
going
our
to
platform.
compensate them?
Senator, our job and what we take seriously is making sure that we build industry-leading tools to find harmful
To make
content,
money.
take it off the services,
To make money.
and to build tools that empower parents.
So you
that
didn't
help
take any
working-
action. You didn't
That's
take
not
any
true,
action.
Senator.
You didn't fire anybody. You haven't
not true.
compensated a
That's
single
not-
victim.
that's
Let
not
me
what I
ask you
said.
this. Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now?
Well-
They're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I'm sorry for everything that you've all been through. It's terrible. No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
Okay, that's enough. Now you might be wondering why I showed you that clip. Simple. Because it's a perfect case study in modern Machiavellian politics. Machiavelli said a ruler must know how to appear virtuous, even if he's not. That's exactly what you're watching here. Hawley doesn't give a shit about those kids. He's acting heartbroken because it plays well on camera. He's not seeking justice. He's setting the stage for a drama. The grieving parents behind him? That's the emotional backdrop. Zuckerberg, cast as the villain. And Hawley, he steps in as the self-righteous prosecutor delivering his big, Oscar-worthy scene. Listen to the way he slows his voice and says, "Would you like to apologize to them?" It's not a genuine question. It's a scripted line. This isn't about getting an answer. It's about looking like the guy who demanded one from the big bad billionaire. Then he leans into the fear.
You've got families from across the nation whose children are either severely harmed or gone.
Turning their tragedy into a weapon aimed at Zuckerberg. He's not looking for solutions. He's creating a villain. Hawley doesn't care how or why these tragedies happened. What matters is framing big tech as the evil empire corrupting and killing kids. It's emotional manipulation, plain and simple. He's not protecting children. He's scaring voters. Machiavelli would be proud. Fear is power, and Hawley is milking it for every drop. Now, you might be wondering, maybe Hawley's actually concerned about the kids. It's not like you can read minds. I can't read minds, but I can read the situation. And this has nothing to do with helping kids. Because if it did, what exactly is the argument here? That a platform with 2 billion users should be held personally responsible for every tragic decision made by every mentally unstable teenager on Earth? Really? That's not accountability. That's lazy blame shifting. If anything, let's talk about the real failures. The parents. They hand their kids smartphones like pacifiers, let them roam the internet unsupervised, then act shocked when shit goes wrong. First, they offload the responsibility of raising their kids to social media. Then, when the damage is done, they offload the blame right back onto social media again. Zero accountability. And of course, Hawley's not going to say that, because telling voters they're bad parents doesn't win elections. And Zuckerberg? He won't say it either, because it's PR suicide. So instead, everyone keeps playing their part, and this circus goes on. Honestly, I can think of a lot more to say about Senator Hawley here. But the video isn't about him, so to finish off the video, is Machiavelli good or evil? Well, to answer that, we need to first answer a deeper philosophical question. What even makes a person good or evil? Are we born as blank slates, and our goodness is something we build through our actions brick by brick? Or are we born inherently good, and being good simply means resisting the temptation to do evil? And if someone does do evil, can they redeem themselves by doing good later? Or does the stain remain forever? If being good means being honest, kind, and selfless, then no. Machiavelli doesn't check those boxes. He tells rulers to lie, to manipulate, to kill, and to betray if necessary. Although point to be noted, he himself never really employed any of the tactics. But if being good means protecting the people, preserving the state, and creating stability in a chaotic world, even if it requires dark choices, then Machiavelli is certainly good. Not in a saintly hug-your-enemies kind of way, but in a cold, practical, someone has to do the dirty work kind of way. So, is he good or evil? Maybe he's neither. Maybe good or evil are the friends we made along the way.